Hi, I'm Jeanette, the Northdawn Coach. Welcome. I'm glad you're here with me as I continue on the topic of what to do when you are in job search mode, or maybe it's more like what not to do, but I'm going to give you some ideas of what to do. So what not to do is to go with all of the voices that you hear around you saying, oh, you're in job search, got to get your resume updated, start applying for positions. And that voice is probably in your own head as well. And what I've been talking about over the last couple of videos is don't do that, because there's a better way to go about that. And so we have been really diving in deep around what the better way is. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's urgency likely in this process, and you do want to be looking at applying for positions. So, go ahead. You can do this in parallel, but just don't forget this important step, which is really diving into understanding, and I'll say air quotes around this, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? So often we jump to the conclusion that we understand the problem, but in this case, around your job search, unless you're going about looking for the same exact thing that you've been in before, which you probably aren't, there are nuances to the search process that are important to discover. And what I'm walking you through in the course of these videos is a tool that I like to use with my career coaching clients to dive into getting the nuances out of this process to really better set yourself up for success in the longer term of the job search process. So if you haven't caught the videos before, go back and catch up, because I'm diving into this step by step. And today we are on the second level of the logical levels model or framework, which is the kind of the organizing landscape for the work that I'm doing with my clients in this regard. And we're looking at the next level in the set of logical levels, and that's the one that would be labeled behaviors. So if you were with me last week in the video, we talked about the first of the logical levels, which is environment. So when we think we want to make a change, a career pivot or a transition, or just finding another job, what we're looking at is likely something in the environment level. All the things external to us is kind of at first blush why we think we're looking for the change, or what we're wanting to change about it. And as we work through the logical levels model, we discover, oh, well, actually, there's something more to that. There's something deeper that might be driving that, or might be standing in the way of successfully working through the change. And so last week you did the work of really digging into the question, what is it about my environment that's causing me to have this goal of making a career transition or pivot, and looked at all the different aspects of environment. Now, likely you're stuck in making that change unless you make a modification in the next level, which is the behaviors level. So behaviors are really, like, to describe this, the outcomes that you're looking for, you're not going to get a different outcome unless you go after a different behavior. Now, what is a behavior? Well, behaviors are things like your actions, your reactions, another way to say that might be your responses to things. It might be behaviors in terms of habits, routines, systems that you have to go after, how you show up, how you read others, how you interpret the meaning of others' behaviors, how you influence other people, how you utilize language to describe both your own actions, but the actions of other people. So these are all different aspects of behaviors. And so the question that we want to ask here is really, what am I thinking and doing that is causing me to have this goal? And the goal would be, again, about a career transition or a pivot. So in other words, what are the behaviors that are driving this decision? It's a little bit more nuanced or difficult in terms of a question than the first environmental question. But this, we're starting to get to some of the meat behind it. And it's surprising what things that might seem obvious after you've discovered them aren't as obvious until you go through this sort of a process. So I had just to share a pretty simple example of this. I had a client that I was working with who was wanting to make some sort of a change, and there were a number of different things that came up in environment. And one of the things that came up in environment was related to how much travel that they were doing in their position. In fact, an exhausting level of travel. Well, when we got into the behaviors section of the analysis, what came up was, this was a person who had a number of people on their team that could have been doing travel, but they were making the assumption that because the people had different things going on in their lives that made it harder for them to travel relative to this person's ability to travel, like maybe young children at home or, other things that just made that more difficult. The assumption that they were coming to from a behavioral perspective was, well, I have to do that then because they can't do it. However, in making that realization of maybe I need to make a change of behavior here. Maybe I need to talk with them about, taking more of that on so that it's a little bit more balanced. That shift, now it didn't solve everything related to it, but was a key aspect that, of course, in hindsight, that seems so obvious. However, it took this process to really have that come up in a way that was more manageable to be able to, once you notice it, then you can actually do something with it. So that's the idea of this second level. So again, it's all about behavior. What am I thinking and doing related to, having this particular goal? Try that this week. Try answering those questions. If you've been following along, you already really dug into the environment level. Try this next level. We're going to come back next time with another level that's a kind of even higher level. And more things will come out of that are connected into the behavior piece of it, which is connected into the environment and so forth. Now, if you're having any troubles working through this process and it would be useful to have somebody working that alongside you, please reach out. I'm happy to do a free 45-minute career strategy session that might be able to get you unstuck in that way. So I will put a scheduling link in the description box so that you can take a look at putting that on your calendar if that is something of interest to you. All right, thanks for joining me today. I will be back again next week, and in the meantime, have a wonderful week ahead. Take care.